Hi everyone, my name is Shalhevet Schwartz, and this is Gefet on Daf Yomi, a joint project of Hadran and Yeshivat Drisha. The sugya that we'll be learning today is an opportunity sort of through a machloket between Rashi and Tosafot on how to read a particular sugya, um, an opportunity to think a little bit more deeply about the nature of our obligation in mitzvot, and really what it means to live as an Adam Mitzvah. The question that right is doing mitzvot something that we sort of are stacking up points, kind of cosmic points via the number of via the mitzvot that we do, and each one has its own independent value. Or on the other hand, might we think of a life al pi halacha and al pi Torah as something that exists as a more coherent whole without thinking about mitzvot as each bearing a certain kind of individual value. Um, and that question really is gonna emerge from a machloket that seems much smaller between Rashi and Tosfot about how to read a particular braita that's brought on our daf lamed hey. We're in a conversation really about more broadly about Dinei Nefashot and Shabbat, and as we are talking about Shabbat and what kind and the different things that are doche Shabbat in Dinei Nefashot, we get into a conversation not about Beit Din, but actually about Meit Mitzvah, and the mitzvah to bury a body that does not have anyone else to bury it. And via that, we are going to see a braita that brings Midrash Halacha that Rashi and Tosfot have a debate about. So let's begin with this Kal V'chomer from this Kal V'chomer of Reish Lakish about Meit Mitzvah being doche Shabbat. So Amar lei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan utehei kvurat Meit Mitzvah doche Shabbat mikal v'chomer. So Reish Lakish says that burying a Meit Mitzvah should be doche Shabbos, meaning that if there is um, a person who dies on Shabbat and doesn't have anyone want to bury them, we should be able to do whatever melacha it takes to bury them from a kal v'chomer from avodat b'mikdash. Uma avodah shedoche Shabbat kvurat Meit Mitzvah doche ota mi v'la'achuto. So just like avodat Beit HaMikdash is dochesh, right? Avodat Beit HaMikdash we know is dochesh Shabbat. We light candles in the Mikdash, we bring korbanot on Shabbat, etc. So we know that avodat Beit HaMikdash is dochesh Shabbat, and we know that Gvurat Meit Mitzvah is doche ota, doche avodat Beit HaMikdash. And we know this from V'la'achoto, from a drasha on this word V'la'achoto, the word that's going to be the braita that we're going to read in a second. We'll come back to it. We know that Gvurat Meit Mitzvah beats out Avodat Beit Mikdash from this braita, and we know that Avodat Beit Mikdash is Docha Shabbos. So theoretically, from a Kal V'chomer, and I'll skip to the bottom, the last two lines, Shabbat Shenidchet Mipnei Avodah, Ino Din Shetehei Gvurat Meit Mitzvah Docha Ota. The Kal V'chomer, right? If Gvurat Meit Mitzvah is stronger than Avodat Beit Mikdash, Avodat Beit Mikdash is stronger than Shabbat or is Docha Shabbos, then theoretically also Gvurat Meit Mitzvah should be Docha Shabbos. That's the Kal V'chomer, and the way that it looks kind of is put here, right? The Avodah of the Beit Mikdash takes precedence over prohibition of work on Shabbat. A Meit Mitzvah takes precedence over the Beit HaMikdash. So it would seem that Meit Mitzvah would take precedence over Shabbat. So that's the context of the Kal V'chomer here. And just Rashi makes a little bit of an interesting right, kind of methodological point about what on earth the sugya is doing here. Right, Rashi on our sugya to Hekurat mitzvah doche Shabbat. Reish Lakish lava matnitin ba'amei Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish isn't actually talking about the topic that is the subject of the Mishnah, which is about Beit Din and Dinei Nefashot and Shabbat. Elba alma usedaruha misadrei hagmara kan mishum desofa lishol udehei mitat Beit Din doche Shabbat. So actually, the beginning of this conversation seems unrelated to the topic of our sugya, but via this conversation between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, we will get to a conversation about mitat Beit Din being doche Shabbat, and that really is the subject of our sugya, which is talking about mitot Beit Din. And because of that, Rashi is just pointing out that the editors of the Gemara put this sugya and the conversation around Meit Mitzvah and Shabbat here in order to set up the conversation that would ultimately be related to our mission. But now let's go back to the Braita itself, right? So we are bringing this Braita to show that Kvurat Meit Mitzvah doche ota being the avodah, that Kurat Meit Mitzvah beats out the obligation to beats out obligations to bring sacrifices and etc. Tanya. I'm on the second line of the second paragraph here. La'aviv u'li'imo la'achiv v'la'achoto. So that's right. It's bringing a pasuk. This is a midrash halakha, a pasuk about Nazir. Right. The pasuk in its context is about Nazir who la'aviv u'li'imo la'achiv v'la'achoto lo yitama. What it says cannot become tamei for those people. Ma talmud lomar. So what is v'la'achoto coming to teach us? Harei shehaya holech lishchot et pischo v'lamul et beno v'shama shemet lo met yachol yitama. Right, let's say he is going to shech his korban pesach or to circumcise his son, and he hears shemet lo met, that one of his relatives, aviv, imo, achiv, achoto, he hears that one of his relatives died. Yachol yitama. Might I think that he would be permitted to become tamei? Amar lo yitama. So comes the end of that pasuk is lo yitama. He may not become tamei. Yachol kishem she'eno mitamei la'achoto kach eno mitamei le'meit mitzvah. Right? I might have thought that just like he is not mitamei for his sister, he's also not able to become tamei for a meit mitzvah for someone, a meit mitzvah, someone who doesn't have anyone else to bury them. Talmud lomar v'la'achoto. La'achoto hu de'eno mitamei, aval mitamei le'meit mitzvah. Right? The specific word v'la'achoto is coming to teach us that it's sure relatives he can't become tamei for, but he can become tamei for a meit mitzvah. So this is the proof that meit mitzvah is doche avodat beit hamikdash because of we saw the words lishchot et pischo there, and someone going to shech their korban pesach. So even shechting korban pesach, a mitzvah to say that is avodat hamikdash, and that is right. There's a chiyuv karet associated with it if you fail to do it. That still gets pushed off for a meit mitzvah. So ad kan, that's the brota. Now we're going to see how Rashi interprets the Breita. This is a long Rashi, who brings actually the makor of the Breita from the Sifri on Sefer Bamidbar, the original Midrash Halacha. And what does Rashi tell us? Gabe Nazir k'tiv al nefesh meit lo yavo uktiv batre la'aviv limo la'achiv la'achoto. He says the context of this pasuk, it's in the context talking about a Nazir, and it says that he may not become tamei for all these people. V'chulu yitiri ninhu deha me al nefesh mishtama. So Rashi is saying the basis of this midrash halacha are that the words la'aviv limo la'achiv la'achoto are all lichora, they're all extra words. We don't need them because it just said al nefesh tamei lo yavo. It said about a Nazir that he may not become tamei for anyone. So why do we need this list? So now I'll sort of run through the drasha, what he's going to learn from each one. And I'll just really read through mostly the yellow, right? Drashina me'aviv, that ha lo ba'el elohotzi meit mitzvah shmutar tamei. The heter for becoming tamei for a meit mitzvah really comes from aviv. Le'imo is about a Nazir Kohen, right? We saw the pshat of the pasuk is about a Nazir, so this is about a Nazir Kohen. Right? I might have thought that right, a Nazir Kohen has two right. There are two reasons why right, he's more kadosh than a regular Nazir, still can become tamei for a meit mitzvah. L'achiv, right, is about a Nazir Kohen Gadol, Dikdushato Chamura, Sha'af Belo Nazirut Asher Tamei L'Krovim. Right, that a Nazir Kohen Gadol, I might have even thought that right, his kedusha is on an even higher level. That right, he can't right from his Nazirut, he can't be Tamei L'Krovim. From his Kohen, his Kehuna Gedolah, he also can't become tamei for krovim, for relatives. And even he can become tamei for meit mitzvah. And la'achoto, the last one right there, right? Harei shahaya kohen gadol v'nazir v'holech lishchot et pischo te'ika mitzvot tuva. Right? La'achoto is coming to teach us about a kohen gadol who is a nazir and is going to shech his korban pesach, right? Who ika mitzvot tuva. He has right there are a lot of reasons why maybe he shouldn't become tamei, or reasons why he shouldn't stop what he's doing to go and take care of this meit mitzvah. Afilu hachi la'achoto de'eno yitama. Right? Even so, sure he can't be tamei for his sister, but he can be or any relative, but he can become tamei for a meit mitzvah. So Rashi is reading this breita, right? The breita that we saw, the words of the breita, Haresha hayahu lishchot et pischo. Rashi is saying, just so you know, if you look in the original Sifri, it's not saying stam anyone who's going to lishchot et pischo. It's coming to say that a kohen gadol who is also a nazir and is also going to lishchot et beno. I might have thought that he couldn't become tamei, right? That he couldn't become a tamei for meit mitzvah. Kamash Malan that he can for Meit Mitzvah, but for his sister, he can't, or his relative, he can't. Now, right, Rashi is telling us the word v'la'achoto is coming to refer to someone who is in a in a very serious situation that would theoretically preclude him from becoming tamei, and for Meit Mitzvah he can. Now Tosfot is going to have a bring a challenge on Rashi from a sugya in Zvachim. So Perushim contrasts right Harei Shaya Kohen Gadol v'Nazir v'Holech Lishchot Pischo. Right, so right Rashi is interpreting this Breita Harei Shaya Holech Lishchot Pischo as referring to a Kohen Gadol Nazir who's going to Lishchot Pischo. The Kasher says Tosfot to Parak Mine the Parak Tvul Yom, because we have a sugya in Parak Tvul Yom in Zvachim that uses this Breita to be makshe a kusha. So let's just look quickly at the Gemara in Zvachim, and then we'll understand Tosfot's kusha. Maaseh b'Yosef HaKohen shemita ishto be'erev Pesach v'lo ratzah litama. So a man named Yosef HaKohen, and just context quickly, Kohanim can become, they in general cannot become tamei for tumat meit, but they can become tamei for their relatives, right? And a nazir is in that sense more chamor than a regular Kohen, but it's our Pesach. So Yosef HaKohen does not want to become tamei, v'nimnua echav HaKohanim v'tim'uhu ba'al korcho. And his brothers, the Kohanim, said, "Too bad, you gotta become tamei for the kura of your wife." Urminhi. Now the Gemara is bringing a kushia on this maaseh Yosef HaKohen, but really on Achav HaKohanim who forced him to become tamei. V'la'achuto matan l'omar harei shaya holech lishchot pischo v'lamol beno v'shama shemet lo met yachol yitama amart lo yitama. Yeah, right. That right, that someone who's going to lishchot to shech their korban Pesach and hears that a relative of theirs died, might have thought that they should become tamei. So kamashmalan they shouldn't become tamei. Yachol k'shem shelo yitama la'achoto kach im tamei l'meit mitzvah, but that doesn't apply to Meit Mitzvah. I might have thought it would apply to Meit Mitzvah. Talmud l'mar v'la'achoto. Right? Specifically for your krovim, you cannot become tamei, but you can become tamei for Meit Mitzvah. Anyway, this case of Yosef HaKohen is ostensibly not a case of a Meit Mitzvah. It's a case of ishto, of krovim, and then the Breita says harei shaya holech lishchot pischo, right, that lo yitama, that you should not become tamei in that case. So what were Echav HaKohanim doing? Why were they making him become tamei ba'al korcho? Gemara answers Shmamina kan kodem chazot kan lachar chatzot, that the Breita, when it says you should not become tamei for a relative because of the korban Pesach, is referring to after chatzot, right? It's really close to Pesach, and you really have to do it. Right here, the Yosef HaKohen, maybe it was wait, maybe that's, sorry, it's the opposite. That right, that we're talking about different cases. That Yosef HaKohen, he was in a situation where he really ought to have become tamei for her, but that the Breita refers to a case where he should not have, because the Pesach was more important, closer to Pesach. Anyway, the Breita is coming to as a challenge on Yosef HaKohen, but is Yosef HaKohen a Nazir Kohen Gadol Shehaya L'Holech Lishchot Pischo? Right? Does he have all those reasons not to become tamei for his sister? No, all he is, Kohen ostensibly should be able to become tamei for his sister, for his wife. The only reason why we would say that he should not become tamei is because of Holech Lishchot Pischo. So, right, how does Tosfot frame this objection? Right? This Breita was brought as a kushia about a stam kohen, umay kushia. Shani hacha deika mitzvot tuva. If Rashi's right that the Breita is talking about a case of a kohen gadol, nazir sheholech lishchot pischo, then the reason why he can't become tamei for his sister is because ika mitzvot tuva, because there are a lot of different mitzvot that are coming into conflict with this. Right, that theoretically, holech lishchot pischo itself, according to, it seems like Rashi's interpretation, isn't enough to trump the chiyuv to bury, or the chiyuv to bury a relative. And so only with, right, when it's combined with Nazirut and Kehuna Gedolah, according to, it seems like from Rashi, that would be enough to trump to make you not able to become tamei for a relative, that the korban pesach itself isn't enough. But here, right, it seems like the korban pesach itself would be enough. All he is a kohen, and a kohen can become tamei for a relative, right? There's in the sugya and zvachim, it seems like the Gemara learns from our pasuk that a kohen gadol can't become impure for a relative on erev Pesach. But it seems like according to Rashi, right, the prohibition to become tamei for a relative would only apply to a case where there are several kind of competing factors happening at once. A mitzvah of shechting your korban Pesach plus a kohen gadol plus an nazir. And that theoretically, in the sugya and zvachim, if Rashi was right, the sugya and zvachim could easily have answered that as an answer to the kushya, right? You tried to bring that breita to be makshet on the Echav HaKohanim of Yosef HaKohen, could have answered, what do you mean? It's only Aser if he was also Kohen Gadol and also a Nazir. Seems, and they didn't answer that, which means like it seems like it would be Aser even without Kohen Kahuna Gedolah and Nazir. Right, so what does Tosfot think? Right, okay, near Al Farish, right? The Breit is only talking about just someone who's going to bring their korban pesach, olam mulet beno, right? Ve'ino lo kohen gadol v'lo nazir, right? He doesn't have any other reasons not to become tamei for his relative, right? The only reason not to become tamei is this mitzvah, or this time-sensitive mitzvah that you're working on. Right. Also read the Breita. Right. The Breita is saying, we learn it from La'achotah. And then it says, doesn't say anything else about his situation. It doesn't say Kohen Gadol v'Nazir Right, Rashi, why are you bringing this whole midrash halacha from the Sifri and saying that that's the Breita? No, the Breita is just saying it's just learning about someone who is osek b'mitzvah that is time bound. Right, v'hadatani amart lo yitama mishum delo ate aseh debtumat krovim v'yidche aseh de pesach right odemila sheyesh bo karet. Right, the reason the pasuk is saying lo yitama there, right? The reason he can't become tamei for his sister is not because I have all of these mitzvot together, the kahuna or the nazirut and the mitzvah, but it's just coming to tell us that sure, in general, I have a mitzvah to become tamei to bury my krovim. But that mitzvah isn't enough to be doche these other mitzvot of Pesach and Mila, both of which are mitzvot say that have karet associated with them. That once I'm already on my way to do those mitzvot, then the mitzvah to be come tamei for my krovim doesn't come and isn't doche that mitzvah, while on the other hand, Meit Mitzvah, which is a kind of more serious situation because the mate themselves need you, that would be doche. So those would explain this again a different way, right? Regular person on their way to perform some kind of time-sensitive mitzvah. Here it's right, the mitzvot in question are circumcision and korban pesach, whether it would apply to mitzvot say that are maybe less chamor, that don't have a chiyuv karet associated with them, not sure, but in the meantime, those are the mitzvot that the Breita brings, right? You can't become tamei for your relative. You can become tamei for a mitzvah. Right. So really, the way that Tosfot's understanding Rashi, right, at least ostensibly, and at least kind of in this first stage of Rashi, and the reason why Tosfot are makshe on Rashi is because for Rashi, it really seems like the read of the sugya, right, that the intensity of a person's right obligation to of a person's kind of obligated stance really depends on how many mitzvot are stacked on top of one another, right? It might be that just going to shech my korban pesach, according to Rashi, sure, maybe that's not enough. That if my relative were to die and then I would have a mitzvah to go and peel away from the mitzvah that I was doing and take care of this mate. But that if there were a number of mitzvot stacked on one another. Sure, I'm osik the mitzvah, and also I have this kedusha of nazirut, and also maybe even the kahuna gdola, right? That this combination would add some kind of humra to my situation that would make it the case that I should not become tamei. Having more mitzvot stacked on top of each other, right? They have more weight when there are a number of them combined. And sure, even the combined weight isn't enough. Doesn't trump a Meit Mitzvah, which is kind of which has a different status, because right there, it's not just about mitzvot weighing against each other, but it's really about the needs of the mate. But that theoretically, two mitzvot or three mitzvot weighs more than one mitzvah of tuma for v'la achotah. Tosfot, on the other hand, is imagining the picture very differently and is saying, no, right? Being being osef mitzvah, the fact that I'm already going to take care of the korban pesach or mila, right, is already enough in and of itself to trump v'la achotah. And sure, Meit Mitzvah is a different category. And what this drasha is coming to teach us is that Meit Mitzvah is really a fundamentally different category than all other things. But it doesn't matter whether I'm going to Shech my Korban Pesach and I'm a stam, just a stam, a regular Joe, or whether I'm going to Shech my Korban Pesach and I'm a Nazir and I'm a Kohen Gadol. Theoretically, right? If I'm currently engaged in some kind of important religious activity, or I have it right, there's some kind of kedusha on me that um makes it the case that I can't become that I don't have the space either because of my personal status or because of what I'm currently engaged in. That I don't have the space um to go become tamei for a relative, then it shouldn't matter how many mitzvot that's true of. Your state of mind, or not state of mind, but your state of being at any given moment, right? We're not stacking mitzvot on top of each other, right? What we care about is where you are in relation to your service of God, your engagement in mitzvot. Now, Tosfot ends up wanting to be miyashev the shita of Rashi with his own shita, and ends up interpreting, right, offering another interpretation of Rashi that actually brings him much closer to his understanding of what's going on. So, od yesh li liyashev Perushim to im mishum holech lishchol et pischo lechude lo nimna miletamei ki havinami bahade achrine ein bekach klu. So what's Tosfot saying here? Tosfot saying the stacking of the mitzvot isn't actually necessary for the first part of the Breita, right? The stacking of the mitzvot, the Nazir, Kohen, Gadol, Shalhevet Schwartz, Pischo, right? That's the reason why you're right, not able. That's not the reason why you're not able to become tamei for your sister. You could not become Holech Lishchot Pischo by itself, sure, that's enough to not become tamei for your sister. Really, what Rashi needed to stack the mitzvot for is for part two, for the make mitzvah, right? Um, and what Rashi's coming to tell us, right, is that actually even all of the stacked mitzvot together for a Meit Mitzvah, the Meit Mitzvah still trumps it, right? Right? In a situation of a Meit Mitzvah where just going to Shech Korban Pesach isn't enough to trump it, meaning you should still become tamei for a Meit Mitzvah. So then ki havi nami bahade achrine in bekach klu. In a situation like that, when the Meit Mitzvah, which trumps the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, Rashi is saying the Kohen Nazir Shalhevet Schwartz is going to tell us that even if on the side added in on the side of the Shalhevet Schwartz Pischo, right? I add on Nazir and I add on Kohen Gadol, Meit Mitzvah still trumps it. Actually, what Rashi is going to tell us isn't that stacking mitzvot really adds the weight, but that's a havamina that Rashi wants to warn us against. That, right, that if there's a mitzvah that's so important, the Meit Mitzvah is so important that it trumps Shechting your Korban Pesach, you should know that it even trumps a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir who's going to Shech their Korban Pesach. But sure, like, right, Shechting your Korban Pesach plus Nazir plus Kohen is stronger than Vila Achoto, is stronger than Tuma for Krovim. And that's true even without the Nazir and the Kohen Gadol, right? Shechting your Korban Pesach of itself, we know that from Zvachim, is strong enough to say that you shouldn't become tamei for your sister. But what Rashi's going to tell us is I might have thought that stacking mitzvot actually makes a difference, and that in a situation in which I have all these kedushot and all these reasons not to become tamei, that maybe then for a Meit Mitzvah I shouldn't even become tamei. No, Rashi's saying a Meit Mitzvah is so important, or not even that a Meit Mitzvah is so important that it trumps all three, but that actually stacking mitzvot isn't really a big deal, right? Isn't really any reason, right? If one of them doesn't trump Meit Mitzvah, if Meit Mitzvah is more important than one of them, then if Meit Mitzvah is more important than each of them individually, then Meit Mitzvah will still be more important than all of them when they're stacked on top of each other, right? So, right, Rashi's coming to the stacking of the mitzvot is a chiddush, not on the side of when you should not become tamei for your relative, but actually it's a chiddush on the side of when you should become tamei for a Meit Mitzvah. Right, so where we end up, right? Rashi thinks the drasha of Lachoto teaches, right, that when there are several mitzvot at stake, one still must become impure for a mitzvah, even when you'll lose out on the opportunity to perform many mitzvot. So Rashi, according to Tosafot's interpretation here, and this actually, I don't think it's such a bad shot in Rashi, is coming to tell us you might have thought that more mitzvot stacked on top of each other is makes a difference. Kamash Malan, that that's not true. Whereas Tosafot's saying, I would never even have thought that stacking more mitzvot on top of each other really makes a difference. Right, this is all really about right the Holech Lishvot et Pischo being a suk in a mitzvah that is time sensitive, right, and that you're currently engaged in, and what are the kinds of obligations that can come in from the outside, and how do they affect right which of those obligations that come in from the outside force me to turn aside and take care of what's going on immediately in front of me. A mate mitzvah, yes. A relative, no. But it's really not about the combination of mitzvot and how they add on to each other and the kind of weight they add on to each other. So Rashi, right, it seemed like when we first read it that losing out on more mitzvot requires a special drasha, and that theoretically that weighing mitzvot on top of each other might actually make a difference. Tosfot saying no, it doesn't make a difference. And in light of the challenge of that Tosfot bring from Mizrachim, he even says that for Rashi, it looked like they made a difference, but actually they don't. So I think, right, this picture, kind of taking a zoom out view of, right, we've seen this in the context of Meit Mitzvah, but I actually think that this machloket between Rashi and Tosfot gets at a larger question about really what it means to be an obligated person and what it means to look at the world of mitzvot. Do we think of mitzvot as individual obligations that theoretically, right, we want to get as many of them as possible, and that theoretically more of them combined has more weight? Or is right being a person who lives al pi Torah, right, that they operate as a unit more than they operate as kind of individual principles that we have to abide by. Thanks so much, and looking forward to seeing you next week.